How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another entry of Sharing Your Stories. I got my companion Stella with me today. I'm sure she will not stick around for the whole thing. She tends to get a little ornery when I start talking. But if you're new around here, this whole point of these videos is for me to share stories from people in the community here, whether they are subscribers, Patreon supporters, or just somebody who watches the channel and sees my email and wants to send in their story and share it with the rest of the community. Whether you're a nomad or not, if you're thinking about van life, or if you have zero interest in van life and just want to share a fun tale from your life, that's kind of the whole point of these videos. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. This first email comes from Annette, the subject line, "A Story for You." Annette writes in, she says, "Hello, Matt. I've been watching your channel for a while, and I'd first like to send you huge kudos and thanks for sharing your life the way you do. Your videos are inspiring, creative, and oh so human in all the best ways. And I mean the best ways. I really do." Thank you very much, Annette. So, I guess I should just get into it. There's no real point to my story. It's just a story that happened along many a long road. Here goes. While I live in my own home now, in my mid-50s, that's not how life started out for me and my family. I grew up in an unusual way. My mother was a homesteader looking for that perfect piece of land to build a home and live her dream. And my dad, well, my mom always said he had itchy feet. He couldn't stay in one place too long. He kept telling her we had to go somewhere else to find a place to build her dreamed of self-sufficient farm. Nothing was ever right wherever we were as far as he was concerned. If it was right, he always found a way to ruin it. We'd travel somewhere, find a bare plot of land or a ramshackle house off in the woods or on the top of a mountain, and we'd get started with gardens, a well, an outhouse, wood cook stove, piles of firewood, kerosene lamps, and a menagerie of animals. Then, always, something would go wrong, and we'd pick up sticks and go off again somewhere else. North, south, east, west, we'd end up wherever the gas money ran out. We always knew when it was coming. An old school bus, van, or camper, or even a camper shell slapped on a pickup truck would be parked in the yard after school one day, and we knew. He had itchy feet again, and we were going to leave as soon as he built it out, and we were loaded up. He was retired, you see, 20 years older than my mother, and he had a pension plus his Social Security. That was his moving money, so we always knew, wherever we landed, we'd be staying for at least a month, but we always prayed for more, at least a season, at least the school year. Nothing mattered to him when he wanted to go. No begging or pleading did anything but aggravate him. It always went the same. Everything that could be sold was. Few things made it for every journey. I don't think I ever spent 2 years straight in the same school. All but once, when we lived in the same place for 3 years straight, did an old log cabin with a Depression-era addition slapped on the side, perched on top of a ridge in the Appalachian Mountains. That house burned down one night, and my parents were in the process of building a new one when another bus appeared, and we knew it was over. That was not home anymore. I remember packing up a U-Haul in the middle of the night, my parents frantic to get it all loaded before dawn so we could be away from whatever place we were leaving at the time. It happened more than once. Us kids crying, always crying. We never left a place happy. My dad, you see, was a real-life monster. He hurt little girls, including me, including all my older half-sisters who had long ago disowned him. I associate the sound of tires on pavement with safety because when the vehicle was moving, he couldn't hurt me. The trips from place to place were the only times I felt safe for my entire childhood, and those trips didn't end until I left and got married at 17, so he couldn't hurt me anymore ever again. Now, I know this doesn't sound like van life really, but it was sometimes, and sometimes it was bus life, or tent life, or camper life. It was all the same. Sleeping on the floor of a vehicle with my younger brother and sister while my parents slept on a makeshift bed, staying at campgrounds to wash clothes and take showers, Meals cooked over campfires or Coleman gas stoves. Our fridge was a cooler full of ice that was forever melting and needing drained. No electricity back then for us since there was no such thing as solar yet. Sometimes a campsite had power hookups, but what would we need power for? To watch TV? We never had a TV really, and when we did, back then they were giant consoles that weighed a ton, so there was no way they'd haul that thing out to watch at a KOA or a national park. We only brought things like that along to sell to somebody for a tank of gas and enough money to buy bologna and bread. That was where our bikes went, our go-kart, our dog that was a coonhound. Anything not needed to homestead somewhere was always for sale. It all ended up sold away, even my mother's wedding ring. Anyway, that's how I grew up. It was bad sometimes, it was good sometimes. Sometimes it was horrifying and scary, sometimes it was actually really nice. Winters were hardest, as you can imagine. No need to go into detail there. Sometimes we had a kerosene heater. Most times my dad would start the engine and let that heat up the vehicle. Mostly, we just huddled together under layers of blankets. Trying to keep up with schoolwork, so at the next school I wouldn't be behind, was a constant battle because I was determined not to grow up an idiot. I don't mean to laugh. I used to read a lot. When you live a lifestyle like that, all you really have to do to pass the time is read. So I did. I read stories to my siblings on those long drives until it got too dark, falling asleep to the thump of tires going over the regular cracks of concrete slabs that the interstates are built of, with the slow and steady appearance and disappearance of streetlights in cities or the never-ending dark in between them. I've lived all over the lower 48. I've seen what America looks like from one end to the other, and even Canada a time or two as we trekked up to Alaska for a while. That was a nightmare. The Alaska Highway in December is no joke. I know how big this country is, and I know that even though it's big, the people are all pretty much the same no matter where you go. They all just like to think they're unique or special. Nah, they just live in a different geography, that's all. I can see how they might not understand how small the world really is when it looks so big from their backyard and they've never been more than 100 miles from it their whole life. Hard to imagine, but that's how it is for a lot of Americans. Seems strange, doesn't it? Now here I am. Dad died running away from another child's family. He had a heart attack. Good, one less monster in the world. My mom died years later. Cancer, she never did get her homestead. They'd divorced decades ago, but he kept showing up in her driveway in a van or a camper or school bus. He wasn't allowed inside her house, though. I didn't know how bad she'd had it from him till I was an adult with children of my own. How horrifying it must have been for her to have him just appear like that and refuse to leave till he got his next check. She was afraid of him. We all were. I look back on that life and the one I made, and I wonder how different it could have been to travel to all those places in the way that you do. Maybe it would have been easier. You have so much more than we did. Solar power, battery packs, a little fridge, hell, even a real coffee maker that doesn't have a glass knob on the top and has to be heated up on an open flame. The differences are night and day, but in some ways it's just the same as what I remember from my time on the road. The difference is it's a choice you made just for you, and you're a good man and, more importantly, a good father. I guess, hang on, you can't, okay. I guess if you are living on wheels because you want to, it must be a great feeling of freedom and independence. For me, it was about feeling safe. To this day, when riding in a vehicle or driving, I feel safer than I do in a house. Funny, huh? Even after all these years, I'm not afraid to go somewhere I've never been before. I'm not afraid to move. It's no big deal, but nowadays, I'm a homeowner. LOL, imagine that. I'd never have believed it when I was growing up, but it happened. I have a family, I'm happy, and all of that traveling and living on the road was a long, long time ago. It may sound like a horrible way to grow up, but I learned from it despite it all. No matter how bad things get, I know to the core of me that it can always be worse. So I'm always grateful. I always appreciate what I have. I never take anything or anyone for granted. I always try to be kind and considerate, and above all else, I do nothing that would ever hurt anyone else or make them feel afraid. If I see need, I try my damnedest to help if I can, and if I can't help, I'll look for someone who can. Time is the longest road we travel, and we are all heading in the same direction. Life is precious and fleeting. None of us know when our journey will end, but one day it will. The future is always just down the road, and the past is a place best left behind. These are the lessons I learned along the way. I made sure my siblings knew all this too. As their big sister, it was my job. My sister became a nurse to help heal people who were hurt, and my brother became a truck driver. He said he had itchy feet too, but for him, he wanted a place to come back to, and if he ever wanted to wander, he might as well get paid for it. Can't argue with that logic. He's also gone now, a cold that became pneumonia and then became septic. I miss him. All three of us were born in different states. We were all traveling before we were even born. But for me, now, I have my house, my garden, my chickens. I have my sons and daughter and my grandchildren. I only travel for fun now, and that's the way it should be. I don't really have an ending for this other than to say I admire your channel and all you do, and the way you do it. You make it seem more like all of Calgary is your house. You go off and come back home again, like my brother did in his truck. You make sure your daughter has security, but as she grows up, she'll get to see how big Canada is, how beautiful it is. She'll get all of the best parts of traveling and none of the bad. I think that's wonderful, and she's a very blessed little girl. Every time. I wish you all the best, Matt, and lots of good fortune. May you live a charmed life, and may you always have lucky. Even in the bad times, always remember the good. Never forget you are loved and needed. Thank you for sharing yourself with the world. Thank you for making me smile so often. All the love, Miss Annie. Thanks. Annie, have you ever thought of actually like writing? That was really well done. Sorry, give me a second. Just change the title of these to Matt Cries and Talks a Lot. Because that was, yeah, you did a great job of telling your story, and you had a lot of succinct ways of presenting it. Your through line of itchy feet and the way you told that tale. It actually breaks my heart in a certain way. You'd say you have good memories with the way you were brought up, along with the accompanied bad. It's so unfortunate and heartbreaking that your father was the way he was, because I would hazard a guess that if he didn't have that side of him, if he had just had the itchy feet but had still been loving and caring, things might have been different. But we don't want to live in the what could have beens. I think you take away a very positive attitude from that upbringing, and I totally see why what you have now is so valuable to you. It's definitely a story that makes someone like myself think about the position we are in. And it's a very interesting, grass is always greener sort of situation when it comes to this story you told. Thank you so much for your support, your very kind words, and for sharing your story with us. I really, truly appreciate that. Not a lot else I can say. You wrapped that up in a nice little bow, the best you could when it comes to your life. The creature comforts you speak of that say make life easier, I mean, obviously you are right. I can't really speak to having lived this lifestyle without them, without solar and battery and my fancy coffee maker and all of that. I would like to think I would still be able to do it. That's just where I got to in my life. And of course, those fringe benefits and those luxuries are very nice to have. But I can see why, if you didn't have them and accompanied with everything else you were going through, would leave a little bit of a different taste in your mouth, so to speak. But thank you again for writing in. Okay. Give me a second here. All right, we've got a next one coming in here from Jude, whose screen name is Judah Buddha. Jude writes in, he says, here is my story. Jude. Hey, Jude. Sorry. Hello, my name is Jude. Love your videos, Matthew. I call this the Great Awakening. This year, I turned 46 and have been working the same job for 20 years, cubicle life. I have owned a home alone since a few years back. My ex-fiance left me with the house and mortgage. That took a toll on my mental health severely, but I got through it by just telling myself everything will be okay. I have been keeping up with the house since everyone I know said it was a good investment, but I ignored the voice in my head that said, should I sell? The house needs a lot of work and would drain my savings to get it up to par to sell for a decent price. I have about $100K in savings that I have saved up for repairs on the house, but this is all I have and nothing else but money in nothing else but some money in a 401k. Recently, I have had some health issues I am still trying to figure out. Maybe cancerous, which has caused me some anxiety. After my doctor visit, that night I woke up frantic in my sleep. It was a feeling I never felt before. Mortality. Oh boy. I dove into a dark place from that moment and realized I was stuck in a lifestyle that no longer served me. It was almost like a snap of the finger. All my life, I was just living comfortably, never thinking a day would come I would possibly become ill or really have to deal with thinking about mortality, but rather pushing forward just to live in the moment. After more doctor visits, I started to really think about middle age and what my future might hold. I looked out the window of my house one morning and saw people mowing lawns, trimming hedges, and accumulating Amazon boxes outside their houses. What was the purpose? The lawn will grow again, and material items will just sit in houses and take up space. I was taught from an early age to work a good-paying job, earn a wage, buy a house, and collect things that make me happy. So I worked, paid my bills, made dinner, and watched TV at night, rinse and repeat until the next day I had to return to work. A couple months ago, a coworker that recently retired passed away suddenly in his sleep. We were close colleagues. He was with my company for over 30 years and was a devoted employee. This also started getting me thinking of my current situation and my future. One day I saw a video of Chromes from Van City Van Life living in a van driving through Canada. I didn't know people could live with such freedom. So I needed to ask myself, am I living my best life? I was never told to explore, travel, never stay in one spot, take risks, as growing up as my family assured me living the way I was is exactly what you should be doing. I work hard to just heat this home in the winter, of New England as well, just keep it up with repairs. I have been researching van life for over a year, and I see its ups and downs with videos from different channels on how this lifestyle has freedom, but it comes with its own costs of comfort. You probably can address this in your videos. Lately, I have felt I need to quit my job, sell my house, buy a van, and become nomadic. This is the only way I see out of this, but I have no clue where to start. I feel giving up everything I have built in 20 years of my life is an impossible feat to give up. I feel very conditioned and set in my ways that I might not adjust to change well. What would I do for work on the road? How would I take care of my health problems with no insurance? How could I possibly sell everything and figure out a plan to get into a van? Am I making the right decision to do so? I feel if I stayed where I am at and what I am doing, I will just end up like my retired coworker that stayed at my company for 30 years. My house won't be paid off until I am 65 years old, and I feel my life will just be the same until one day I am gone. Any advice or encouragement would be appreciated. A faithful watcher, Jude. It's an interesting situation in the sense that it's not interesting at all. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that so many people can relate to exactly what you are feeling, Jude. I know I can. And if I can guarantee you there are 1,000 other people out there that can. And it's exactly right. It's exactly that wonder and that fear of almost what will I leave behind? What will my life have meant to me? Am I living my best life? And it's so easy now in this day and age to ask those questions and feel this sheer terror of what you're doing with your life. That's what I felt. There were many reasons that got me to that point of obviously, but your nail on the head reasoning there and the contrast with your passed away coworker, it's absolutely scary, but you already are one step ahead in the sense that you know there's going to be continued challenges. My only advice for you is that if it's what you honestly want to do, you have to do it. You only live once is a saying that was coined by a lot of the millennials and whatever generation came after with the hashtag YOLO and all of that stuff. But it kind of is true as far as we know. So you need to make the most of it. And if you're not happy and you have the ability to change your life, you should do it. You're in a very unique situation. I'm sorry. I don't think there's any children or anything like that involved. There was just an ex-fiance that we can, a lot of us can relate to that as well. You've got the freedom to do it, but you're concerned about getting rid of what you've built over 20 years. But if what you've built over the last 20 years isn't making you happy and feeling content inside, and when you watch other people like Chrome or myself do this, I think you've already answered your question. Like it probably is going to be for you. And at the end of the day, at least trying it. I'm a big believer, and this is funny because people who know that I'm a picky eater will poo-poo me. But if you don't try it, how do you know it's not for you? I think it would be a mistake for you to do it all at once. In my experience, you move into the van. You know, do whatever you have to do. If you have to sell your house, if you can get away with getting the van before you sell your house, even better. But if you can't, maybe do that first. Don't quit your job right away. A lot of people concern themselves with, what am I going to do for work on the road? I can't speak to that. I don't have I stayed rooted. I stayed grounded. My job was in the city where my little girl is. And that was just the way it was going to be for me. And I knew that at the outset of my van life. And you know that. I can tell from the way you wrote this story that you know that van life isn't like a lot of those channels where they present the van life, right? Stuff like people like myself, Chrome, Emmy, Jeffy, Mark the Paint Guy, even Simon. And there's probably many more channels out there that do actually show what van life really is like. And it's not just beach bums down by the coast on the ocean and waking up to beautiful sunsets, or waking up to beautiful sunsets. Well, I guess it depends on how much you've had to drink the night before, but waking up to beautiful sunrises. And it can be that you can get yourself there, but that's never going to be every day. Van life is living in a van, pooping in a bucket, and doing a 9-to-5 for a lot of people. But you have that freedom of travel. You have the comfort of knowing that you have your entire home with you no matter where you go. And that's a start. That's a spark to ignite what could potentially come later. You just got to actually do it and take a leap of faith, in my very, very humble opinion. You know what? I'm going to leave this there, guys. I don't want this to go on too long. I know that was only 2. I usually try to do 3 or 4, but Annette had a very, very well put together story of her life, and Jude's was a great way, I think, to sort of end this and wrap it up, and hopefully people can chime in and give their opinion on Annie's story and even Jude's request for encouragement and advice. I know that there's a lot of people here on this channel that do live the nomadic life, that live it one way, where they are traveling all the time, and others that are like myself and they're grounded in one central location for the majority of their life. So if you guys can chime in the comments and maybe give Jude some advice, that would be greatly appreciated. That's kind of what this is all about. And if you are watching and you would like to send your story in, please do not hesitate to do so. You can do so at the email address vanlifepluscontact@gmail.com. I would be more than happy to read your story here on the channel. And until the next one, you guys just go out there, be happy, be creative, be yourselves. Most importantly, be positive, and I'll see you all in the next one.